I'm
Yep.
going to introduce you and give you that opportunity to kind of just let the flow go and tell me what you want to tell me about yourself and today's conversation, and we'll just go from there.
Sure.
So, 1 o'clock, welcome to Beaver Politics, and I have a show called Finding Your Own Damn Way, and that is about helping people to navigate through our Canadian political landscape. It's about bringing education and resources and solutions to and bringing up conversation that people may not have thought about. So
Yes.
that's the premise of the show.
Mhm.
I just want to take time to remind people that those gifts are really to help support the emotional work that the hosts are doing here on the show and to run the show, because there's expenses in that. We have subscriptions that people can sign up for $4.99 a month, and that subscription gives you access to Discord, where the conversation continues, and we are on YouTube. So this is going to be up on our YouTube channel. You can go back and watch it, and usually we have it up the very next day. Cool. So having said that, I want to welcome my guest here today, Kay Today.
Okay.
And yeah, you just go ahead and introduce yourself, Kay, and
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So my background is like I'm a professional writer. That is my career. And one of the real like areas of expertise I focused the writing on was cults and cult research, and people that get into it, why they've joined, why they leave, and then kind of the tale of cult survivors afterwards and that kind of thing, right? And what was interesting with that is there's obviously a linkage with certain political groups and cults. Like a lot of times people assume cults are just religious groups alone solely, but there can actually be political cults, right? And I think, you know, we're kind of seeing a lot of that very prevalent in the United States. Like, I mean, MAGA fits all the categories of that, right? But my educational background is I have a master's and I took a lot of poli-sci in university, though my master's is in communications. So I sort of linked all of it together, like cults with communications with politics, right? And so I guess we were going to talk about today, like what we're seeing currently shaking down in the United States. And then is that a concern for us in terms of political ideologies coming here, right? And I think, you know, the word fascism has been thrown around a lot when it comes to what's happening in the United States. And people are concerned that, like, is that what's really kind of rolling out here with the Trump administration? And at this stage in the game, you know, you can't definitively say yes, but I think the one thing that is alarming, that raises major red flags, is there's like 4 main criterias to a fascist regime rolling out, and it's kind of ticking all 4 boxes right now. So that's a little alarming. Now, with the conservatives in Canada, Canada has always kind of been like a conservative light when it comes to how it stands in comparison to like the GOP in the States, right? The conservatives in Canada have always been a little bit more like liberal leaning, but and we've talked about this, it's come up, I think, on your show and like with a lot of content people have made, the history of the Conservative Party in Canada and maybe why there might be some concerns there moving forward. So as we know, the Conservative Party as it stands now, yes, it's led by Pierre Poilievre, but it wasn't always the version of it we know now, right? Like at one point in 1993, Harper decided to merge the Alliance Party in Alberta with the Progressive Conservatives, right? To make, and it makes sense to do that. You're going to get a bigger voting base for your party. But the concern there was that a lot of the funding coming into the Alliance Party back in the day was coming from big time evangelical groups, like religious groups, right? Like kind of religious zealous type groups. And that can kind of go hand in hand with Christian nationalism, which is a little scary. But so that's sort of what's happened. Like those 2 groups merged in 1993, and then we now have the version of it we have now. But when you start to invite that into your party, then you kind of have to then, because they're funding it, evangelical Christian groups, you sort of have to do a bit of their bidding, right? So they're going to stand for a lot of things that we're now seeing. Like they're obviously not going to be very strong on the whole women's rights things. They're going to be pro-life. They're, you know, all that stuff. So then you're having to see probably a conservative party with a platform that supports who's funding it, who's voting for them. So that's where we kind of are at now. And I don't know if a lot of people realize like the history of it, what they're kind of bringing forward now, but thus why we're seeing what we're seeing with a lot of their stances on stuff currently.
Can I ask you, you're from Eastern Canada or Western Canada?
Ontario. I live in Ontario. Yes.
So else in British Columbia last year, we had a major election, and these evangelical groups played a huge role in the rise of our BC Conservative Party that had 0 seats and then went from 0 to being the opposition. Mm-hmm. And they funded with groups like Take Back Alberta and the evangelical groups behind Take Back Alberta. So to think that this is a benign thing just kind of irks and lurks in the background.
Yeah, is naive to think.
Wake up. I mean, the money's on the table now.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And it's a huge thing in the US, right? I mean, back to like the Reagan era, he started to link to Jerry Falwell and sort of like a big Christian evangelical influence on politics. And now they have stated straight up in their constitution, you should not be mixing church with state, but they clearly were doing it anyway. And so, yeah, we're definitely seeing that in Canada. And it's alarming because those two things should not mix, but they are because the money, right? Like the funding. So you're right. It isn't a banal thing. Like it is something that people should really be kind of watching for.
We don't have separation of state and church the way they do in the United States. So I think we've kind of adopted that concept from the United States, but the reality is the church built Eastern Canada, and the policy and the legislation that went alongside a lot of the development here in Canada. And I really think bridging the gap, as they, to use a phrase, to talk to conservatives is you have to meet them in those groups, right? You have to connect, knowing that they are, this is where they exist, so to speak. The ones that don't exist and lurk in cyberspace anyways. But people are actually going to real churches that are out there, right? And what used to be sort of an inactive church flow through state and church, it wasn't as obvious. But in my time, I remember when stores weren't open on Sundays. Yeah. Right? Like that was a real thing in my world. And what we, and churches were the ones that governed that. And even today, when we look at what's happening with churches, like I did a sort of a deeper dive into the United Church and found out that they are actually training disciples to learn how to be on school district boards and how to be parts of your city councilor.
Oh, yeah.
To be an MLA or MP, MPP.
Yeah, absolutely. And that connects very well with my cult background. But like there was a really good documentary that came out on Prime last year. It was like Shiny Happy People or something like that. It was called, like, I don't know if you remember that, but it's about a religious group, like a very big time evangelical group in the States, and it turned into a cult, and they were hardcore controlling of women, very patriarchal. They believed in this whole thing where like the man is the king of the family or the head of the family. Nobody questions him. He makes all the decisions. And so then that particular group, they're linked with the Duggars. I don't know if like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were linked with the Duggars. So a lot of those boys and the Duggars were getting involved with this main pastor that was preaching all this stuff. And then what he was specifically doing was he was trying to get a lot of the young men in that denomination to go into American politics, to run in American politics. So that's why the older one, Josh Duggar, before he had his whole like crime go on with child stuff. Yeah. He tried to run, and so did his father and everything. They want to get these people into politics because then they believe that their evangelical beliefs will be pushed forward big time on a political sphere, right? So it's same thing's happening here, but like very patriarchal, very like just scary, right? Yeah.
So so I'm assuming you've probably seen the documentary about the family out of the United States and how that group has now become international and has eggs up here in Canada, and they have major conferences right up here in Canada. And that is another group that trains men in a very specific patriarchal approach. But everybody is in this family are the silent partners, the ones that support the politics behind the scenes. And I was watching. It was some kind of anyway. I just get shocked when I find out it's happening here in Canada.
It is, yeah, it is. There's definitely that linkage between like religion, for sure, religion and politics, and it's. I just don't know if people are as aware of how entrenched it is. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I just want to put a plug out there to get people to try sharing the live out there, and let's get this conversation to have more than 14 people in the room, because it is awesome conversation, I must say. So question: how
Yes.
much of this do you think exists alive and well in our Conservative Party?
I think a lot of it does. And I think that's why you're seeing this huge, and like, again, because I'm in Ontario, and I guess because you're in BC, like, we're not seeing it as much as individuals living in Alberta, right? But from what I'm hearing anyway, just from like friends that are living there, like, there is a huge different vibe going on altogether in Alberta, right? Like, there just is. I mean, traditionally, have they always been more conservative than the rest of the country? Yes. But it has reached a totally different level there. Now, has this been post, the COVID deal and what we all saw go down there? Or has this always been there? It's hard to say, but like, they are pushing for like separatism of Alberta. You know what I mean? Like, there's a huge contingent there that want to separate altogether and make Alberta its own, I don't know, country. Like, so it's hard to, I don't know. It's hard to understand sort of where people are standing when it comes to the Conservative Party across the country.
Yeah, because there are, and then if you focus on the province of Alberta, then you're going to find all of those kind of the more cultist people, right? The separatists.
Yeah.
There's separatist movements across Canada. Vancouver Island has a separatist movement. Quebec has a separatist movement. So you'd be surprised at how many separatist movements actually exist when you start breaking them down. But Alberta is loud and proud, right? And they make more noise. And because a lot of them want to separate for their own country, but a lot of them want to go to the States as well, right?
Right.
So, and they want to curve out northern British Columbia as part of that. What my brother, he's a a conservative working down in Texas in oil and gas. Okay, so I bought him one time a cork flat map of Canada. It's a Christmas ornament, and I cut out Alberta, northern British Columbia for him. I said, "See, I see you." But he at least at that point in his life, he was part of that separatist movement. But I think I've been listening a lot about how the big mistake for the Conservatives was when the Alliance Party came into their midst, right? And then you've got they got scared because Maxime Bernier broke off and started the PPC party, and then Peter MacKay back east, he took a big piece, right? And they had to find a way to bring all these conservatives back into their fold, and that is today's current
climate.
Right.
And I know, like, people have gotten very worked up that they feel like Trudeau was in for a long time, right? Okay, so we hear a lot about that. Like, why was he in for all these time? Whatever. And now we have Carney in place. We saw a lot of people worked up. They didn't think that he came into it fairly, even though he did. I mean, like, because he wasn't an MP and all that stuff, right? All the stuff, right? But like, the thing is there's a reason why traditionally Canada tends to have liberal leadership. Like, if you look back in the past, like, there's a reason for that. And a lot of times it's just because most Canadians on average, their values and beliefs line up a little bit more with liberalism or centristism. Like, most people aren't going the extreme conservative route, right? Or far right route, obviously. So, like, it's just hilarious, like, that people are so worked up. Like, why hasn't there been more conservative government? But there's a reason why. Like, it comes back to the policies and stuff. The reality is, a lot of times, the Conservatives are traditionally, and the Republicans are traditionally known as slow to change. Okay with the economy, typically, right? Tries to get things a little bit more fiscally in control. But where the Conservatives and the Republicans always lack or maybe are different is they don't want to support, clearly, like, social initiatives and positive social reform, right? So I think most people do want that, because at the end of the day, and what we're seeing how it's playing out in in the United States. This isn't just anymore about politics. This is coming down to human rights issues. And when you start to get into that, that's always going to be more like leftist leaning politics. So it's not a surprise that the average Canadian is probably centrist, leaning more left.
Right. And when you start exploring the conservative policy around whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, what bothers me, I think, about the conservatives' approach to this issue in particular is that they sneak the language in. When you go and read their policy declaration, that is 189 pages. Come on, first of all, with that. But, you start looking at, I was taking some notes, the way they frame language, like, for instance, they want to give a personhood to the fetus of an unborn, of a fetus when a woman is killed who's pregnant. And they want a special language introduced into the criminal justice system that gives personhood to that fetus, so there can be more harsher penalties assigned for that particular crime. Now, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. Someone kills a woman who's pregnant, they should get extra life for that second life, that unborn child, right?
Right.
But what putting personhood to that fetus does in the criminal law is allow that then to be brought over into the healthcare conversation. And when you give personhood to that fetus, and you've already supported that with precedent, right? But they've not been successful in doing that. Every time they have put a private member's bill forward to move that initiative, the Liberals and the NDP have been empowered to stop that from happening. But it's one of the underhanded ways that they are trying to manipulate people into, coming over to the dark side or whatever you want to call it, right? But it is important that some people are paying attention to this language.
Yeah, for sure. And I went to the, I didn't go inside of it, but I went to the Pierre Poilievre rally, campaign rally that was in my hometown last night, right? And I just kind of wanted to see what the vibe was, but I'm not interested obviously in going in, but it was interesting. I mean, there was not that many people, to be honest, that went inside, but there was quite a lot of people on the outside that was protesting it, right? So that was kind of interesting, but they still were pretty, it was pretty respectful, nothing crazy happened. They were just boo, Poilievre, more. But what I did notice about it, which was very fascinating, was that for sure, bulk of people going in, and might I add, I live in a very liberal area. This is it's always liberal. I can't think of a conservative that's actually MP that's been in power in this area in a long time. So in decades. So it's a liberal stronghold. But anywho, so that says a little bit about probably there isn't going to be a huge turnout for him anyway. But regardless, the bulk of people honestly going into it were, and I'm not trying to be stereotypical, it's just what I saw, older white men. Might I add white people? Okay. Majority. Older white men, and also a lot of these 20-year-old dudes, a huge amount of these 20-year-old guys, right? And it's kind of given the vibe of sort of that same kind of contingent in the United States, the gym bro, very masculine energy, Joe Rogan podcast listening, Andrew Tate following dudes, right? And it's just interesting to me that was the majority of his audience last evening.
And how big do you think the audience was?
Now, he said it was 4,000 people. That's what he said.
That's the one we're all conversing about, right?
That's what he said, but I don't think so. If I were to guess, I would not say that. I think that was a very large estimation. But anyway, yeah. But it was just very telling to me, right? That it was wow, this is the main. So these are his followers.
That's it. And, and worried about crowd size, because that's the conversation that's on today. I posted a video on kind of what the community up north of BC there, Fort St. John. I posted a video just because I knew that conversation would get them going, and it sure did. I expected to be in Cook Jail today, but I didn't get there, so I was happy about that. When you're talking about the conversation with the young man and the Joe Rogan kind of guys, Have you seen Adolescence? Have you seen that documentary?
I haven't yet. The one on Netflix? Yeah, I haven't had a chance to yet.
It really is. It shows about the conditioning of young boys at
Yeah.
age 12, 13, 14, their exposure to porn, all of the things that, and this adolescent ones is about a child who chooses to murder. And, but it is not lost on me the amount of work that the right wing have put in terms of money through Elon Musk and the
Yeah.
other billionaires in hiring bots and hiring people to go into Twitch, to go into the gaming rooms, to have spent time there for the last 10 years,
Yep.
conditioning and indoctrinating and having a game go on, and at the same time they're doing something violent to one of the female characters in
Mm.
the
Yeah.
game, right? And then they're celebrating that and saying, "Bitch, make me a sandwich,"
Oh my
those
God.
kind of things, and the
Like incel attitudes. Yeah. Yeah.
incel attitudes,
Yes.
and they are finding a home in the Conservative Party.
That's right. And it's another threat. So we got religious zealots and this sort of incel male energy. Yeah, it's dangerous. And they try to talk to it, and that kills me, right? We just saw Pierre Poilievre who was like talking about women's biological clocks are ticking and everything. How about don't worry about women's reproduction? And also, why is that always a focus? Like women, you know what I mean? Like the only thing that they're focused on with women is making babies. Like excuse me, and you're a Pierre PP, you're a man. You're like a white man. Why are you even talking about that? Like, creepy, creepy, right? But
Yeah.
it's but I mean, it's so misogynist. Like it's just so misogynist.
Yeah, and as somebody, well, I'm 61 years old, so I've been fighting these same fights for years and years and years. And I know a lot of younger women think that we have established all these right, and we have come a long way. Don't get me wrong, we've made some big steps, but the jeopardy of losing those steps right now is very, very real.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing in the States. Like they're just rolling back a bunch of gains, right? The civil rights movement, suffragette movement, like those gains are getting rolled back. And the thing that's crazy on that front, we can discuss a little bit of America now, because obviously it's impacting us. And that comes up a lot, right? Like as a Canadian, why do you make any kind of content focused on American politics? Well, obviously it's completely impacting us. We just had tariffs levied on us yesterday, right? But anyway, what's happening in the States, which is really interesting, and I don't know how much of it we're going to see here, but I think we are anyway, whether we like it or not, is the fact that like they have these groups like MAGA that become literally like a political cult. And so what they're doing is they're like, Donald Trump is the cult leader. They all have their little matching red hat cult attire. Like it's become that. And so it won't matter what he does or says because they're just so brainwashed and ingrained with that, right? That is an alarming thing we've never seen in a long, long time. And I think that's exactly what was going down with like Hitler Youth and Germany, right? He had such a massive fan base that he used. And then the things that we're seeing in the United States, if we want to talk about that, like the four main things that are like the four key indicators of fascism are you have a leader like Trump that becomes very authoritative and worshipped almost like a god, right? A dictator, Putin. So we're seeing that. The second one is that you start to have a lot of militarism or a police state. You have a lot of control. Obviously, we're seeing that with ICE taking people off the streets. The next one is you push a really big patriotism, nationalist agenda. Obviously, we're seeing that with this mega crowd, like the patriotism stuff. But it crosses a line where it's like we're better than everybody else, and then that can easily cross the next level of that, the threshold of that, where it's like we're all white people and we're better than everyone else, right? Germany. So that's the next one. So another box checked. And then I think the fourth one is, okay, well, we covered that. Oh, elitism. The fourth one is fascism usually connects itself with elitism, where they try to link themselves with like billionaires and an oligarchy, right? To have funding. Well, clearly we're seeing that in front of our eyes with Elon Musk. So it's just interesting because as I say, the four main indicators of fascism, like they're all there in the United States. But people have been warning them forever. That's the frightening part. Like, I just saw Hugh Dancy. I don't know if you know of him, but he's an actor, right? He's married to Claire Danes. He just put out this big video on social media. I don't know if you've seen it, where he's literally crashing out and he's like, "Oh my God, everybody, I'm finally realizing it. We're living in an authoritarian dictatorship. Oh my God," right? But it's like, Hugh, buddy, Hugh. People have been warning you about this happening like forever. We all saw it with his first term. So that's why everybody was like, don't vote him in a second time. But you did anyways, right? So and then another huge indicator of it is the fact they're having a massive brain drain going on there. Like in 1940s Germany, that was one of the first things that happened. The intellects, the academics got the hell out of there because they could see what was happening. All of the celebrities, anyone who has funding to get out are leaving America. And then you're getting people like Tim Schneider leaving.
Way.
Yeah, the professor from
come back to the fold,
right? Oh no, they won't come back unless Trump is gone, maybe. But it's I think it's definitely telling for sure that Tim Snyder left, who wrote on tyranny, who's like the leading history professor of fascism, who was at Yale. He's now going to U of T. I mean, that's a red flag. Right?
His daughter is a really big country and western singer. She does that song X's and O's.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. She's like Rob Schneider's daughter. Yeah.
You know, the other big piece that I think proves the fascism goals and authoritarian goals in the United States is the dismantling of the media. And I think that the education system has successfully who to trust anymore. And they're feeding them the echo chambers, and they have captured and successfully are controlling that social media space through the gaming, right? So, I mean, they've been good at it. And here's my fear. When you watch The Handmaid's Tale, what did they do? They took the United States and crumbled it, and made it crumble on the international scale as well, so they could build this evangelical authoritarian country, and they didn't care about what the rest of the world was doing. And man, this is what I can see echoes of that in the way Trump is. What is the word I'm looking for? It's not individualism. It's you know, when you shrink back into that nationalism and with the patriotism and stuff. Oh, there's a word. It starts with an I.
Yeah. And he's not following the law, right? Like, he doesn't want to follow the Constitution. He's not following the law. He's signing executive orders that are going against all of those things. Like, that is just alarm bells.
And I think people should pay attention to those exact alarm bells with the Conservative Party here in Canada.
Absolutely.
They have disgustingly abused our parliamentary norms with the non-confidence motions, with him not getting a security clearance,
yeah,
with him our campaign outside of the election writ. I'm noticing that it's 1:30, and this is when we usually bring up some guests into the show that want to come up and have a conversation and ask you a few questions. Sure. I'm sure. So if anybody...
I got maybe like 10 more minutes, and then as we talked about, I have to take one of my kids to karate, but yeah, I got maybe like 10 more minutes, so sure.
Well, if you can hang out for 10 more minutes, that's great. I appreciate all your time. Yeah, so if you want to talk with Kay, now's your time. Just send me a request, because I'm not good at... okay, Miss Radical wants up. Thank you.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks.
I'm fangirling you a little bit. I've been following you for years.
Yeah.
I love all the work you have done. I think you were one of the first people to point me to the family and a few other things to connect me. And it was like, whoa, this is why we created Beaver Politics, right? Is so that we could have these really important conversations, because not all of us hold the kind of knowledge that you hold.
Fair enough. And people need to speak out, right? Like, if you see issues, if you see social injustice, it's like, you have to have a voice. Like, that's just how it is, right?
We used to live in Calgary, and we left Calgary because just, not that we don't want to stay and fight, but the fear of listening to Danielle Smith and the way she spoke, and understanding that we were all at imminent risk, just being in her space, being in
Yeah.
her bubble. It was terrifying. What do you recommend other people do during these political times?
It's hard, and I get it. Like, it's scary, right? And I know, like, there's a lot of people that are not sleeping well just from having to watch it all the time. And personally, like, I suffered my whole life from insomnia, so it's so hard. But like, it's so hard, right? But I think you kind of have to, and I've had to do this, just like take a step back from it. And sometimes I'll go on just massive social media breaks. You have to, like, for your own mental.
I noticed you do that, actually. I was like, where is she? She's
Yeah.
gone.
Oh, I have
But
to.
then I
totally do
kind of
that.
get happy for you when I remember these conversations you've had before where it's time to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, you know, like, okay, not to sound like overly dramatic, but like, you literally will get people kind of coming for you if you are fighting the schmozzies. Like, it's just like, it's just not to be dramatic, but like, it kind of is like that, right? So you just have to also be careful. That's all. Like, when you're a content creator and everything, and you're gonna go up against that kind of stuff, like the white power movement and that kind of thing, you know, you're gonna have people who are like trying to figure out who you are offline and everything. So it gets scary. So you just have to be kind of careful. That's all.
Sorry, I'm gonna get down so somebody else can ask you a question. Thanks for sharing. I just love this conversation.
Oh,
Thank
you're welcome.
you. Yes, anybody else who wants to come up, now's your opportunity. You're going to have to invite yourself for some reason. Do you want to come up? I don't, yeah, I'm clicking on the right button here and I'm not seeing anybody come up. So there we go. Jen is coming up. Thank you. Hi, Jen. Thank
Hey,
you.
how's it going?
Good.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Kay. I really appreciate this conversation because I've certainly wondered a lot about. Don't mind my dog. She's
No worries.
I'm gonna go play with the dog. My question for you was, how close do you see what's happening in Canada to the cult-like thing that we're seeing in the States right now? Like,
I think it has the potential. Like, it's definitely not to the level that we're seeing down there, but there's the potential there. So I think, and a very famous
talking points are so similar on a lot of things.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He's stealing everything from Trump. That's what's hilarious. Here, Polly. Like, even Canada first. Trump has America first. Like, he's obviously copying the playbook. And don't forget that his main strategist is Jenny Byrne. Like, she literally came from the Trump campaign. She's been seen wearing a MAGA hat. Like,
Exactly.
like it's
I wonder,
yeah, like, it's
he's
infiltrated.
down for Canada, but his plans are similar. That's my concern. Is that
Absolutely.
I feel like he might be Canadizing it, like toning it down so it's a little more friendly Canadian.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, if he got into office, he'd be doing what Trump's doing.
They've seen Project 2025. Like, and the thing with
Oh, yeah.
Danielle Smith that's alarming is she's going
Yes.
there visiting Trump and all this stuff, and you see all these pictures of it, and she thinks that, oh, you know, I'm trying to make things better for Canadians by her
Why
interacting
should we
with him,
preserve
but
our own
she's
energy?
dancing with the
from other
devil,
countries?
man.
Okay, we're going
Why
to
should
mute
we?
you.
Why?
Okay, just a second. What we
She's
need to do
dancing
is
with the devil by kind of going and, you know what I mean, like interacting with Trump. Like, I wouldn't open that door. Like,
So I muted him twice and he got mad at me. It's just he was just jumping in and not giving anyone a chance to finish. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, the parallels concern me. And Daniel Smith is definitely pumping PP right now. And
Yeah. Yeah, and fanning
in my
the
opinion,
flames.
sucking up to Trump. Like,
Absolutely, absolutely. And at the end of the day, like, his threats of making Canada the 51st state, do you think they're going to stand up to that? No,
No, I
they're
don't.
not. Of course not. Of course not. So that's really what's scary. What people are forgetting with Carney now, I know lots of people have issues with Carney. I'm not necessarily saying I'm a fan. I'm very neutral on it. But I will say what is good, the background that he has, number one, and number two, that he's very smart on making other deals, like setting up other trade deals with other countries and things like that. He's just not going to entertain the clown down south. Like, he's just gonna do his own thing and try to, you know what I mean? And I can appreciate that.
Have you noticed he hasn't called us the 51st state for a while?
Exactly. Or him the governor.
Or him,
Yeah.
the governor. And that's because Trump
Exactly.
has learned that Carney won't talk to him unless we're getting a reasonable amount of respect.
And that's
For-
fair.
And it's working.
He's setting healthy boundaries. He's setting healthy
Exactly.
boundaries, right? So
Well, yeah, because Trump is like a toddler in so many ways.
absolutely. So I think it's a possibility these things could come here, but I mean, I will quote a very famous philosopher that for evil to grow, all it takes is for good people to sit back and say nothing. So the same thing can happen here.
And that's what happened in the States, absolutely, is that they just sat back and
Even the Democrats, they kind of just sat back and were defeated, right? Like, oh.
Yeah, you know, but when you think about how the Democrats didn't fix the educational pieces, I mean, there's a reason it was easy to go into Twitch and the gaming places and take over and to lead these conversations. There were reasons, and the school system in the United States has been dismantled over a course of a very long time, right? And
absolutely.
Stuff like giving kids food and making sure. And when you look at how our conservatives in Canada vote against, and what bothers me is the Conservative Party here, and in their policy declaration, says that it will not vote change anything in the laws around abortion, but they give their members the individual right to vote, to work with their constituents and move their ideas forward, and they can have private members' bills that move forward. And there's an interesting fella. His name is Arnold Vierson, Vierson. He's out of North Alberta, Peace River area, I believe. And he has about last time I checked in, it was over 180 times had moved forward with a private members bill to rename and to give fetus personhood. And it does it at the very end of all of the parliamentary sessions, but it never moves forward. But the idea is on the table all the time. So when the Conservative Party says that they won't do anything, and yet they're allowing their members to move forward with private members' bills, at the same time, they're not allowed to talk to a reporter, or they're not allowed to move forward with any of the other bills, like something that could help with housing. So the Conservatives are sitting on all this stuff, but that private members' bill, that's been put forward a couple of hundred times.
Yeah. Yeah, like what's important. Yeah, sure, for sure. And I mean, the other thing with the United States is, don't forget, like as we were discussing, MAGA really has become like a full-blown cult, and you can't talk rationally with cult members. If a cult member wants to leave a cult, they have to do it of their own accord. You're never going to convince them of that, right? And so there's where the concern is on Canada. Like, are we having groups get sort of so revved and so charged politically, it's turning very cult-like? I don't know. Did we see that with what happened with the trucker convoy and this whole, like, We the Fringe contingent? Did that get kind of culty? As a cult expert, I'm going to say it had its moments. Like, it definitely... So, should we be concerned that could happen here? Yes.
Yeah, and I think if it was a majority government that PP could win, that would be a big red flag.
Yes.
I don't think there's much, unless something huge happens in the next 3 weeks, I don't see it changing drastically enough for him to get a majority government. So...
And their party seems to be kind of imploding from what you hear, right? Like there's also that, like just internally, I don't think they're doing well.
Well, I mean, I think PP's popular. He's not even popular among the Conservatives. He's just their choice because they're so scared of the Liberals from all the propaganda that they've eaten up. Convinced the Liberals are going to ruin the world and make us a one world order and all kinds of weird, outlandish conspiracy theories.
Yeah, like the WEF and QAnon, and they get going on that. And the minute, I hate to say it, but when right-wing political fans start going that route, no. Like,
they're heading to
sorry.
But they don't see
they're getting into conspiracy theory land. And like, it's just nonsense. Like, I'm sorry, but...
Well, what was that queen's name? Queen Amadillo or something?
Oh my God, that is a cult. That is 100 million times a cult. Yeah, she was the QAnon queen. Remember, she showed up at the trucker convoy. She set a flag on fire. She's from BC. She's literally a cult. Yeah, I've actually been doing a lot of research on her.
Down Trudeau on the Ski Hill, or was that somebody else?
No, no, you should look into it. Her name is Romana something. The first name's Romana something. And she came to the Peterborough police station and she tried to have this big thing go down there. And like she has all these followers. It's literally a cult. Go check it out. They crashed a town and I think it's like Saskatchewan, and they brought their cult there and they're like, we're living there kind of like illegally. And a bunch of the people in the town were like, we don't want them here. They're literally a far right cult. And they wouldn't leave. They wouldn't leave. And they're totally far right. Like they tried to link themselves with the trucker convoy. But even the trucker convoy was like, you're too crazy far right for us, lady. Like, no, thank you, burning flags. Like, you're too crazy. Goodbye, right?
That says something when the trucker convoy doesn't want you.
Yeah, that's alarming one. Exactly. But yeah, so again, like there are definitely far right political cults in Canada. Don't think they're not, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that other what is it called? The People's Party or something. They're definitely they're actually more right wing than the Conservatives, but not actually by a lot. That's the scary thing.
Canada. Yeah.
You know, the Queen, Romano there.
Yeah. Didilo. Yeah, that's it. Didilo. Yeah.
She actually convinced people. They sold their houses to give up their earthly possessions.
Oh my God.
One couple sold their house, gave up their jobs, sold their like it was, and moved to Nova Scotia when she was in Nova Scotia from British Columbia here. So it was a bit of a story, and so she ruined people's lives, right?
For sure. No, 100% a cult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and living in Saskatchewan, somebody gave them an old school that had been just no longer in use, and the person that bought the school on the property and gave them that school for them to live in. Anyway, the community very upset with them because they're not nice people, right? They're going to go around and tell you and rip your mask off your face, right?
Yes.
They're that kind. They're that
proud.
We have that living in amongst us in Canada, and I think people need to. Not every conservative is a cult member, but every cult member is a conservative. And I think we need to get conservatives on board with cleaning up their own mess. Get rid of your extremists. Separate them, put them in a pile.
Absolutely. Because you don't typically see that on the other side. That's what's really interesting about this, right?
You don't.
Typically, I mean, what's a far left group? Well, they'll say Antifa, but Antifa technically isn't even a group. They don't have a leader. You can't join it. It's not really a thing. So like there really isn't the equivalency on the left, right? So it's just, that's what's also kind of alarming.
But you've got PP and the Conservatives implying otherwise. You have
I know. They always
left-wing lunatics.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be someone running our country, and his way of feeling about half of the country, at least, is that we're all left-wing lunatics.
He went to the trucker convoy and gave out copies to them. Like that right there should sum it right up.
To some of the Proud Boys who are white nationalists.
Meeting with the Proud Boys who are literally a white power movement. Not cool, PP. Not cool, bro.
And where is the Proud Boys leader from?
I don't know.
BC.
From Canada. Right from Canada.
Yeah. When remember that guy that was walking, and then PP joined up with him and walked with him, and then he turned out to be really a sketchy far right dude too. I can't remember that guy.
Veteran.
Remember that guy? Yeah, he was a veteran, but he was kind of right winger, like too extreme. Remember that? But he was like PP's out there walking along with them and all this stuff. Like he's very entwined with this stuff. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and feels quite at ease. Like I know there was a problem with let's say some mood altering substances involved in this one, but he pulled over when there was a group of them pulled over at the side of the road. They were doing all those mini protests last year on just where people go for rest stops and stuff. And he went into that trailer and it had Diagly on it, and he looked disheveled.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Was not coherent, and that's just getting down and dirty with the down.
Yeah, like as a political leader, you should not be trying to connect yourself to like fringe kind of extremist groups. No.
Well, he hopes that people are not smart enough to catch on, and a lot of I had two conservatives call my door yesterday, and I'd been trying to think of how I would react when that happened because it was bound to. And I just decided to just let it go. But so I just said, hey guys, you got the wrong house. I'm a huge Carney fan. And they just smiled and waved and left. And we were both happy. I didn't feel like,
Just be respectful.
I decided they seemed like nice enough human beings. I didn't feel like wasting their time because they're not getting anywhere with me. And I'm not getting anywhere with them if they're going door to door. So
And good for you. Like, be respectful. Exactly.
Exactly. I was just respectful. But one of them was black. And all I could think was, damn, you don't know. Like,
you're voting against your own interests. Oh, it's so hard to watch it. Oh my God. Yeah. And same with America, right? Like, you'll see all these people that are like, I love Trump, that are like a drag queen, What are you doing? You're voting against all of your own best interests. Hello.
Like this is going to hurt you and it's going to hurt other people in your community.
It's so wild.
If you care about yourself, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But
like, just wild. Think about other people. Yeah, exactly. Please. But this was awesome, by the way. So I should go take my child to karate. But thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining an exciting, invigorating conversation. Sorry there wasn't more people in the room for you.
Yeah, no problem.
We're just getting the show launched in the daytime series, right? These are, people at night. And so we're trying to get the Oprah crowd. Join us for an hour here on Beaver Politics. And you're welcome to come back anytime when we can spend more time.
Yeah, I can.
Would you, I do a show on mental health on Saturdays. Would you ever be interested in coming in on that one?
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Mental health.
We might get some more people too on a Saturday.
Sounds good.
One that out there. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Yeah, thanks for dropping in.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And thanks for dropping in, Jana, you too.
Oh, no problem. I'm just cleaning my drawers and talking to you while I do it. So that was a really great conversation. Learned a lot.
She's very interesting, and she knows her stuff, right? She knows her stuff, and like she said, her background's in writing with her poli-sci classes. She comes with a bit of cred, and she's been a voice on TikTok for years. And so I think people know her, and Pasty Natives just sending a message, you can't come up right now. This is always a bad time for you. You're always making supper during my show. It's all good though. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Radical, too, for stopping in. And we'll take this. I'll try to get the show to go another 10 minutes, and I'll just have some conversation here, and we'll wrap it up today at the hour segment here. I find this conversation about cults very interesting because I was raised in a religious cult called Catholicism, and we were engrossed in the church life, going to masses every week, going through all the sacraments, going to Sunday school, Bible learning all the time. In our house, there were crosses everywhere. There were pictures of Jesus and pictures of the Virgin Mary. Everybody had a statue of the Virgin Mary, and there were prayer beads. And, so religion was a huge piece. And then I left my Catholic, I got, when I got older, started realizing this wasn't the way to go. I became a Jehovah's Witness. And I went further down into a cult, far right-wing Christian cult is what I call it, right? And dismantling that took years. It took years. But if there's one thing I could say, if I say positive things, I learned how to do public speaking. I learned how to go door to door. And just like you did when the conservatives came to the door and you didn't really appreciate wanting to have that conversation, most people I've never had a door slammed in my face. Everybody was always very polite, despite the horror stories of, like Jehovah's Witnesses are coming, I'm going to answer the door naked. And none of that ever happened when I was doing it. Different time, mind you, in the 80s, because I wouldn't want to go. I don't think they even do door to door anymore, do they? Would be too unsafe.
I haven't had a Jehovah's Witness in 20 years. So I don't think that they do. Because I used to get them. I remember a period of time when I got them every week. And no. So maybe they don't, or I'm just not living in an area. But I lived right by a Jehovah's Witness temple in my last house. And no, I didn't get any. So that's interesting. They do up north here in Ontario. Okay, I guess some still do that feel comfortable.
Probably in the smaller communities. I know I've had Jehovah's Witnesses do our neighborhood up here and come to the door. But as soon as they hear I'm disfellowship, that means I've got too much evil in me and that only elders are allowed to talk to me. So they'll ask me if I want an elder brought to the door, and I just no, thank you. You know,
Yeah.
no.
No,
But
I was
don't-
thinking of challenging the guys that came to the door, but not in a rude way, just a, hey, so why should I vote for PP? And then just countering their talking points. But then I thought, I'm just wasting both of our time, really, you know? Let them do their thing.
well,
This is
you know,
Florida. People are pretty...
and they're volunteering, and there's all kinds of strengths, even though I don't agree with the party they're necessarily supporting. I remember the first time my son went to a protest, he actually organized it. He was only 15 or 16 years old, and he shut down the city street, and he had about 100 kids with him. They were not allowed to smoke on school property anymore.
Yeah.
That was, and I definitely disagreed. First, I'm a non-smoker, so when he picked up the habit, that totally blew my mind. But
Yeah.
but I did agree that he had the right to his freedom of expression, and he had a right to protest. So I encouraged it, and he got on the front page of the newspaper, and so he was very excited about that, and it spurred in him that activism. You know.
Well, and that's the funny thing I hear with a lot of the conservatives right now is that they think that what happened in Ottawa was a protest when it wasn't. It was an occupation. There is a difference. You know, I support peaceful protests, even if I don't agree with them. I think you should have the right to protest peacefully, as long as you're not spreading hate. You know, maybe a different opinion than mine, but you should. But they occupied Ottawa. And that's where things are different. Like they were stopping services for people. People couldn't get in their homes. People couldn't get to the hospital, you know, like they were disrupting services in a way that was a danger and unfair to the community who didn't, even if you didn't like Trudeau, they didn't do anything wrong. And they were suffering because of it, you know, that's a protest. No, occupying is not the same as protesting.
Yeah, this wasn't a protest. This was an occupation, and they crossed the line. And it is not lost on me that they don't have the frontal lobe capacity to have figured that out, right? They don't see the harm that they've done to others, and
Well,
they
they
don't
care.
They don't care. Empathy. There's an empathy skill development that didn't take place in those frontal lobes, and so they're not able to make that connection.
I
What
know.
did and what our laws did and not shutting that down was a huge disappointment.
Well, and nice weather is down here, and he's just demonstrating what that short, smaller frontal lobe does.
Yeah, that's why I'm mentioning these things, right? We got a good example in the comment section here. But you know, rage against the machine if you like, but if you want to find the violent people, you got to look into the far right movement. You want to find far left violent characters. There were a few violent characters at the G8 summit in Montreal. Harper put the hoses on them, right?
Yeah, hoses. Did we use hoses this time? No.
We were uniting around. I did a protest in our community, but it was really a capitalist protest. What was the movement called? I had my sign was "I'm not your ATM." But anyway, in Montreal, they had the G7 conference, I believe, was happening, or G8, and they brought in the water cannons but they were individuals. They weren't a movement like, say, Black Lives Matters is a movement, or the missing and murdered women movement in Canada.
Yeah.
There's no leftist organization. They say Antifa, but everybody who doesn't like fascism is Antifa. But they have no entity. Where we have entities, we have white nationalist supremacist groups in Canada. There is over 100 noted extremist groups, and you can find them on the Canadian government website. What's that guy saying? Nice weather. Go have a look at some statistics, and then go find your people, right? And go hug one of your bros, one of your incel bros, because that's what that movement has done. That's where those violent people lurk, and where they're accepted. Because when they go to a tiny Trump rally, they don't behave like that, and the conservatives celebrate that.
Yeah.
They go there and they celebrate it in their small groups in amongst the bigger conservative groups. But I believe the fix for that is for the conservatives to clean up their own fucking backyard and do their laundry.
Well, they want these right-wing votes desperately enough that they're willing to sell their souls for it.
Mm-hmm.
Conservatives, because I mean, I remember growing up during the Mulrooney days, and I hated him. But you know what? Nothing ever came up that made me think that he was a racist in any way. And maybe he was, like, I don't know. But I'm just saying it never really came up for me. But now it's like I'm seeing all these ties to white nationalism, and it's scary. You know?
A lot
Because it
of
does seem to be. Well, it is entirely in the conservative or right wing. You don't see many lefties there.
the planning that has gone into it and for how long. And
Yeah,
when
well, and that's Harper. A lot of people trace it back to Harper.
I was just going to make mention that when I started realizing about Trump and how he was stacking the Supreme Court, I thought, well, hey, we got to pay attention to that here in Canada. And I went and I found out that when Harper was in power, he actually appointed 600 of the 800 federal judges across Canada. And he actually changed the core appointee committee system so that he could have more military presence and police presence making decisions about who those Supreme Court judges would be. So it had already happened here in Canada.
Interesting.
Of putting in some of those far right wingers has a lot to do with resource industry harvesting and being like not upholding Indigenous rights, not upholding environmental laws. Those are the reasons to put in those big players here in Canada, because that's where the big, pushback on those resource, like oil and gas and mining and the harvesting of lumber, all of those things. They want people that are going to support, not environment. Now, there's enough left-leaning judges in there that we still have a strong base here in Canada, but that doesn't mean we didn't try. Right?
I know. But the Supreme Court, I don't know if, I think in the United States, I heard it, they got a liberal back on the court and have veered it back left a little bit.
Yes,
I could be wrong.
Florida, the two Republicans won in Florida.
Yeah.
So, the Democrats just should have showed up en masse and it wouldn't have happened. But this is what happens, right? The left wing sits home and becomes apathetic and stays home, disengages, or finds enough quality of life that they just can disengage from politics altogether.
Are we gonna let women women against Polyev up for a few minutes?
If she can you invite yourself up, or maybe Jana, you as a I do not have the ability to invite somebody up unless they go up on my invite list, right? So,
you just gotta. There we go. Hi, Women Against Polyev.
Hi, thanks for coming up.
Am I up there? Can you hear me?
You can.
Great. Good guest. Nice to see you all. I just had a couple things I just wanted to add. So I'm sort of alternating between listening to you and watching some financial news from the States, which of course is completely devastating to them as a result of their right-wing, lack of believing what they were voting for. Anyhow, just a couple of things I wanted to say. I really liked what your guest had to say. I agree with what she said. And I think in Canada, the Conservatives here they are mirroring about 6 weeks behind what's happening with the Republicans in the States, and that time frame is getting more compressed. The longer Poilievre is the leader, and we have to be very, very clear in this country what these Conservatives stand for, and it's just the same thing that you hear out of the Trump administration. There are many, many examples out of it. The latest one being the woke ideology in universities. Poilievre wants to get rid of that. All that nonsense is just parroting what's happening in the States. And what I see here in Canada, at least on the comments on my page and the few people in my life who are conservatives, is that they're doing what they did in the States. They don't believe what Poilievre is saying. They either don't know it or they refuse to believe it. The big example is the abortion example. If the Conservatives get a majority government, we will have our first piece of anti-abortion legislation within a month of Parliament being open. It's 100%. The women in the States didn't believe it would happen to them, and people here don't believe it either. It will happen here. So there's a sort of a lack of either knowledge or unwillingness to believe what he is actually saying he will do, because there's nothing that Poilievre is saying or nothing that he's going to do that he isn't already saying. Just like Trump, all these people saying, I didn't vote for that. You did, because he actually told you that's what he was going to do. And it's exactly the same with Poilievre. He is telling you what he will do to this country. So that's my first point. My second point is that Canada has the opportunity to avoid going down the same road with this election.
We
I
see
keep
what's
hearing,
happening.
I keep hearing people say, well, Carney's not perfect and Trudeau wasn't perfect. I don't want to hear that anymore. We're not voting for perfection. We're voting for competent, democratic, representative government that's not going to hurt us as Canadian citizens or other people who live in this country. And that's what we need to do. We need to promote that. Carney is the guy to win. He's smart. He is experienced. He knows everybody who's everybody in the world. He will represent our interests, not just economically, but also socially and in terms of civil rights and Indigenous rights, all the things that we hold dear in this country or that we should hold dear. So we can avoid what happens with what's happening in the States. If we end up with a Poilievre government, as far as I'm concerned, we will get what we deserve. And it will be a tragedy for people in this country.
And we
So
might
I
become the
think-
51st state. I think that's very real.
Oh, we absolutely will do that. And they won't have to come here to get it. Poilievre will
Nope,
give
we'll
it,
hand it
give
over
it
to
to
them,
them.
just like
So-
Austria.
Yeah, so we need to be very, very clear about what the stakes are in this election and who represents our best interests. And it is not Pierre Poilievre or his absolute disgusting nightmare of a clapping seal party, just like the Republicans in the States. So I don't know if you saw yesterday a Republican representative in the House actually quoted Goebbels from Nazi Germany, and he said that the state has the right to tell people how they should think and to force them to do that, something to that effect. And that will come here as well under a Poilievre government. So we need to be clear and we need to get out and vote. So please promote that on your pages. We have the opportunity to do something different with all of the advantages that we have in this country, with our resources, our people, our unity, our economic system. So I really hope Canada does the right thing and believe what you see. Carney's a good guy. He's a competent. He's smart. He has our best interests at heart. Poilievre does not. And for those that don't believe that about Poilievre, that's really unfortunate. And hopefully when the Conservatives lose, that they can then do some introspection and fix themselves and try and get out of this right-wing incompetent cult-like vortex that they're in and stop doing it to themselves and stop doing it to Canada. We'll see if they can do that. First of all, they have to lose. So anyhow, those are just my comments, and thanks, Mrs. It's nice to see you.
Thank
So-
you. I have a sort of would like a comment from you about the Mark Carney. It's sort of like I have lots of faith in.
Ryan, if you pay 53% tax, I want to see your tax bill.
There's
If
nobody.
you're talking about personal income taxes, because there's no tax bracket that high in Canada.
We
Yeah.
got a million people following us
Yeah.
here.
And also those kind of comments, like what you're seeing here, they don't even warrant a response. Just ignore them. Let's promote our message. We don't have to keep responding to these people.
So my message or my questioning is this. So I have been, listening to, especially his background. I believe he can walk the talk of his economic prowess with Mark Carney. What do you think in terms of the other pieces where we have to bring people out of that, the incels, the young angry men that are forming the base of that Conservative Party that have been misled to the culture war pieces, right? How do you think Mark Carney is going to do? Do you think the team he's building is going to make that happen? Or do you see something from him in terms of his direct messaging?
I think it's really multi-layered and very complicated. And I see it again, if I can go back to what I'm seeing out of the Democrats in the States, where they're trying to grapple with this issue and how do we deal with it? And they don't really have a coherent answer at this point because it's so difficult. And the forces that are promoting the incel, if you will, movement are so strong and they're so organized. So I think with Carney, if he gets a majority government, what will happen is it will dissipate substantially this extreme right-wing conservative movement in this country. That's what I hope for. It'll hopefully take the snake off of that head and that we can get back to some sort of more typical or moderate conservative talking points that people can identify with or support, that is not going to hurt other people. But the whole incel, I look at the ECOS polling and the young people, that the polling has started to change, that not all young people are voting conservative. Those numbers are starting to change. And not just young women, but young men as well. So I look at that with some hope since Carney has come in. But he's just a straight shooter. he will represent Canada vigorously in what is going to be the worst economic times of our lives. And I hope that that motivates people to start to think otherwise. I have to say, I'm a 62-year-old woman. I don't identify at all with young incel men or that movement. I don't know people in that movement, so I'm probably not the best person. I think it's just really complicated, and I think we need to really, for me, is focus. There's one job at hand here, and that is to get Carney a majority government and get us out of the god-awful nightmare that we're going to be in if Poilievre gets elected, which will promote all of those things that you're talking about, Mrs. The incels, the Jordan Petersons, the misogyny, all of the hate that's going to come our way, as well as the economic incompetence. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's a really complicated.
It is a complicated question, and when we think about when we get discouraged on the left because we realize the infiltration over the last, say, specifically 20 years into these like subgroups to get their base built, we must remember that on the left we have this thing called education. We are being vilified right now if you have a university degree. They're tearing down the respect of our educational institutions. They've become money-making machines. The government has pulled back their funding so that corporations have now taken a seat at the table, and we now have this little crisis around student and immigration, students coming over to learn from other countries and housing, right? As an example, we need to, and I know this is long-term, but when you have a majority government, then you can dedicate money into the younger, like 5, grade 6, grade 7. This is where the work has to take place, and this is where you'll find those people, right?
Exactly. And that's why sorry to interrupt you. I think I totally 100% agree with you. I think a Carney government is holistic. It will look holistically at what creates a sustainable, not just environmentally, but on every level, society. And education is one of them, supporting youth with all sorts of opportunities that they don't feel maybe that they've had before. And it's not going to be a panacea, but it's certainly going to be, will keep us on the right road. And, my sister is a teacher here in BC, and she just called me at her lunch break. She's teaching grade 5 students, and she teaches social studies. And what is she talking about? The political situation right now in Canada. And she's like me, she never shuts up about it. And she says they're totally engaged. They want to know what's going on. They're going to go and talk to their parents about it. She said it's amazing to her how engaged they are from sort of today she's teaching grade 5. She's a sub, so she teaches different levels. To the high school, and she said it's amazing. She finds it very optimistic. And again, we live in an area that people are maybe, I don't know, but her experience here in our community is really positive with young people. So I think this incel extreme right wing movement is actually the minority. They just have a loud voice, and a Carney government will start to drown out that voice. If we get a Poilievre government, it just encourages that voice, like what we're seeing in the United States. And we can't have that in this country. We cannot have that in Canada.
I was just going to say, speaking of media, did you hear what happened to Rachel Maddow?
Yeah, Rachel Gilmore.
Gilmore, sorry. So I don't know what that Maddow means. Rachel Gilmore.
Well,
that was horrible.
And that's what happens. And that actually answered a lot of my questions as to why the CBC, their power or their political commentary has gone so far to the right and so far giving Poilievre a pass over the last 3 years. I could never figure out why our national media isn't more neutral. And it's just given him a total pass. It went hard against Trudeau. It's going against Carney, but Carney's not having it, which is great to see. But that actually answered a lot of what happened to her, which is awful, actually answered a lot of questions for me as to why CBC is doing what it's doing, because they are not a for-profit organization. They're funded by the government and by ad dollars. Like, I don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, but that answered that question for me.
It was CTV. It was.
I'm very disappointed because
it was CTV, but I think the same pressure applies to CBC. I guess that's what I mean.
But anybody here, please call CBC if you want to complain about, or CTV if you want to complain about Rachel getting booted for not being right-wing enough in her fact-checking, which doesn't make sense because she was just accurately fact-checking. She wasn't left wing or right wing. She was reporting on facts.
There's a whole right-wing right-wing group that's out to get her. They have been for years. I've been following that on Twitter and through a variety of people. And they stalk her, they harass her family, they threaten her, they film her. You know, she's young, she's good looking, she's smart, she's articulate, and she is a good example of what your prior guest was saying about the threats to people who do this, who are brave enough. Like myself, I don't do it in person because of my family situation, but you know, these people, especially these women, are so fucking brave, and you know, she's paid a price for it, and she keeps going. But this is a very organized movement that is going against her, and it'll get that much worse again if we get a Poilievre government and this becomes acceptable behavior.
Well, they mess with her career. She got paid for it. That isn't the biggest deal, I think, to someone of her age and in her position. It's having that opportunity, and they took that away from her.
Exactly. And that will happen to more and more progressives or moderate people. Again, if we get a Poilievre government, their voice will continue to be drowned out through, you know, very official organizations, because they don't like women. They don't like young women or pretty women.
Unless they're having babies and staying home.
Yes. Well, that's right. You better have that biological clock going, you know, hard, because otherwise you don't.
Oh my God, the biological clock comment. I keep wondering. I have to fact check these things all the time because I can't tell reality from.
You said it.
I know, over and over again in different speeches. Like that's his part of his whole shtick now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's offensive, and I would have found that offensive at 25 or 35. Like we're not freaking incubators.
Well, and again, he's telling you who he is and what he believes and what he stands for, and that's where it's so scary. You know, because I had a lot of people in my comments saying, "Well, you know, we do have biological clocks. It's not that big a deal." And I'm like, "No, you have to understand what he means when he says
the implication that that's our value.
Exactly.
We expire.
Exactly. And that your economic status has to be tied to your reproductive status and your ability to have children. It's misogynistic, it's hateful, it has no place in Canadian politics, but he's telling you again who he is and what he believes, and that's where people have to get real with it and believe what he's telling you. Stop masking it or making excuses for it.
Well, that's not what to do. Everything is no big deal.
Yeah.
Didn't mean anything by that.
To invite to say welcome to Treaty 6.
Oh, hi, Treaty.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I was trying to get here sooner, but work found me.
I am so appreciative of you when you do arrive. You have words of wisdom, and I was thinking about you earlier when we had our guest up, and she was talking about how volatile Canada, you know, I know there are conservatives who don't believe that other conservatives are violent out there, or that other, you know, that we're not living in this world of major aggression from male and the rise of white supremacy here in Canada, from that movement, from the evangelical cultish movements that are back again, you know, trying to control women and reestablish hard on the patriarchy, you know, but the gift of privilege that has been laid upon young, aggressive men, especially, though I see it in women as well. It's kind of like they've been given permission to express themselves, and they have found a whole new group. And I know that some of us have had lived experiences with those people, with the threats. You know, certainly in the comment section, you know, keyboard warriors here on the right.
Oh, yes. They won't come up half the time, but they definitely won't show their face, but they will talk the talk.
Yeah. I'm from Northern British Columbia. I have experienced the violence. I've experienced the way women are treated. I remember one time I was really young. I was in a bar, and I had, we didn't have beer stores back then. Okay, well, we didn't have beer stores, but you could get off sales at the bar. And so we went in, we picked up 2 cases of beer, and I was holding them, and some strange man came up and just really had a workout there. till I could drop my beer and try to give him a throat punch. But, you know, when I reported that to the police, because I knew who it was,
Yeah.
the whole community laughed it away, said that I was making mountains out of molehills, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to end up back to. They don't understand the progress we've made. Like when I was 16, which I'm 53, so do the math yourself. I don't feel like it. 30 years ago. I had a friend who was the first, she was assaulted on her way home. She was young, 17, but lived by herself. She would been whatever it is that you do when you don't live with your parents anymore. And she got SA'd on her way home, went straight to the police after. And the first thing they asked her is, what were you wearing?
Oh, God.
And I'm been a victim support worker in our court system and have sat and supported SA victims and victims of domestic violence. And I remember one time, you know, like very, very violent.
Like
It was trauma for me as a worker back in those days. And I'm sitting in a courtroom and, you know, this woman was beat up. And of course, it's months later and he gets a fine. And then he's walking by her and says it was worth the fucking fine, bitch. Right? And nobody stood up and the judge didn't haul him back. Nobody, you know, he was allowed to then threaten right in those rooms. And look at, I may be 61, but it's really going back 20, 30 years, going back into like Rome. Come on. It is recent history we're talking about here. Never mind. There's a whole conversation about how this still exists in our systems today.
This is making a lot of assumptions, but I think a lot of women that are conservatives have lived off of the booms of what women's rights have done to the point where they don't understand what they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just your access to female health care and reproductive care. You're losing the respect because they're teaching you that it's okay for people to act like Pete Hegseth, for example, in the United States and still get a placement. That your word means nothing. And it's just a lack of overall respect for women that is coming back. I've noticed it.
Yep.
I live in Alberta. I'm noticing it more than people in Ontario or what have you, but I've noticed just a little bit less respect. And that's just going to keep growing. And what scares me is that all of these gains that we've made, we're losing.
Yep. Those men that felt okay in that behavior are coming back and feeling good about it again. Like just the other day, we were in a, you know, I know the neighborhood like this. I live in rural Alberta. I expect to encounter right-wing hillbilly type folks, right? And they are very brazen. And I know who they are. But I walked into this bar and my mother-in-law and I walked up to the bar because we needed cash. We went there to try our luck a little bit and play some VLTs. And my husband didn't accompany us up to the bar. And there was one of these older fellas, you know, the long kind of beard. And I don't want to stereotype, but it's kind of hard not to sometimes. And, you know, he's got that resource developer looking kind of appearance to him. You know, he's been out in the weather a lot. He could have been a farmer, oil field worker, forester, something like that. And I'm not trying to paint people like that with one brush, but I've seen it's prevalent in that community, especially what I'm going to tell you. So I saw him kind of eye me, you know, that meat look. Oh, look at this, right? And I'm 56 years old too. Like it's been a while since I've been looked at like that. But I was just like, and I looked at his face and I knew exactly what he was thinking. He was thinking, maybe if I get her drunk, I might have a chance, right? And it's because he sees me as an Indigenous woman. My hair was down. I was wearing beaded jewelry and things. And I've seen that look way too many times than I care to even share. But I was just like, wow, this is where we are again. It's been a while since I experienced that. It just felt that same thing. Like, wow, you guys are now emboldened to behave like this once again.
It's Trump and what's happening is coming to Canada has emboldened people's unfortunately men's bad behavior.
Yes.
It made things that they knew were wrong to do okay again.
And you know, it's confusing. Absolutely. And I find it's confusing for the good men. Like, my husband grew up in oil field too, right? And he, I'm you know, has experienced, like, lived in a probably a mindset of misogyny himself, but he's open, he's learning, right? And he's understanding the perspectives. But it's kind of like targeted at them. I feel bad for men almost as much as I do for women, because the patriarchy has really messed with their brains too. And now we're rising up and they're kind of being left behind.
Absolutely, we're calling.
But we can't do the work for them either.
No, I agree.
We have to do it for themselves.
We want to sometimes.
But addicted Bear Row is saying here, as white women, are we calling out the white men in our lives? Oh yeah, every opportunity. Believe me, I am just, on the outskirts of my family for a majority of the white men that I dare to bring these kind of messaging to. I have a lot of family in oil and gas, and I'd spent time in, never mind my social work career, but in employment counseling. And the extra time I had to spend with women who were afraid of SA when they go to those camps, and about the indigenous communities that suffer, and the women that suffer the SA when those men, back in the day, you get your check, right? And they come in and they blow the check, and they would be very violent with women in terms of SA and just the privilege felt in,
Did you want to let Ed up?
Sorry, I will.
Ed is in, yeah, okay.
Ed. All right, we'll bring Ed up. Thank you for joining the conversation, Ed. I'll stop because, oh my.
Hello.
Right now. So Ed, welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Beaver Politics. I've been in another Beaver Politics, that other girl that wears glasses yesterday.
Frontline.
Yeah. So anyways, if you guys want, I'm quite well known on, I've got over 12,000 followers on here. I had about that on Twitter and X, and I quit Twitter, I quit Threads, all because of you-know-who or whatever. And I'm now on Blue Sky and I'm on TikTok. And this is my third day on here. But I wanted to tell you guys something. If you guys look on my profile, there's lots of videos calling out PP. You might have seen my work before. And I just posted what happened with the Tamara Litch concert. Somebody was doing a live here.
Okay.
And Tamara Litch, I think they didn't get sentenced today. There's going to be continuing tomorrow. It was quite violent outside the courtroom. People were getting yelled at, harassed, and whatever. This one guy was stalking this one lady, yelling at her down the street. But anyways, on my thing, I posted, when Tamara walked out of the courtroom, she got a ride from a truck that was from Alberta. I posted a picture of that. I scribbled out the license plate. And then there was also a truck parked in front with Trump 2024 flags, and there's pictures of that on my profile too. But if you guys want know any scoop on PP and his past and all his stuff, and I always post videos of his pressers, all his questions and stuff, you guys can find stuff there.
Are you interested in a guest to be highlighted for 15 or 30 minutes?
Yeah, sure, I can do that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm on every Thursday at 1 p.m. here.
Okay, I'm going to add you. Oh, no, it just says host.
I'll connect with you outside of the show and we can have a conversation about
what
kind of
so
information.
anyways, PP's presser this morning, I posted all the questions and answers. But one thing that really shone out today in his presser, he praised Sir John A. again, like crazy.
Oh,
he said that he was going to erect new monuments to him again today, and
that's what we need.
do you guys know the history?
White supremacist monuments.
Yeah, do you know the history behind John A? I just found out a few things.
Yes.
PP keeps bragging about how he helped get the railway built. Well, Sir John A helped get the railway built by bribing somebody, eh? And then he was dismissed from power. It was allocated. And then he was reelected again for 18 years. He was prime minister, eh?
Yeah, even after that.
And then he was also responsible for Louis Riel being hung, eh?
Yep.
Can I use that word?
Johnny McDonald's talking today for the next little while, so.
Can I use that word there? Sorry. He was
before you get banned, Ed, I need something from you.
Yeah, so he said that word. He was responsible for Louis Riel getting unalived or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why does PP?
Hang on a second, Ed. Ed, just hang on a second. Just because we're starting to talk over each other, but Treaty 6's show on Indigenous Matters Monday night. Her guest was a history teacher, and he did exactly what you were discussing, and I learned so much. Like I learned that in school, but it's different when you hear it again as an adult. And
Do you know what? He was also okay with. He endorsed. He was. I don't know if he ordered it or he endorsed it, but he was okay with Indigenous people being starvation thing, eh?
Yep.
Oh, yes, that whole. I know the story on how.
Like, so why does PP keep praising this guy? That's just an awful person.
Because he's a racist and he's a bigot, and he's again telling you who he is by doubling down on this John A. McDonald.
But doesn't he know people fact check on this guy or what?
Yeah, he doesn't care
Trying to get
because
a
he has a
certain
base.
crowd.
He has a base that likes what he's saying.
Yeah.
And so again, it's part of that same message around abortion and everything else. He is telling you who he is. He is a bigot. He's a racist. He has no use for Indigenous people, and he's going to hurt them.
Well, isn't the Chinese, aren't they getting choked with things? Because didn't Sir John A. order the Chinese people on the railway and a lot of them died?
And the head tax. So I have to go, but I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. And also follow Ed's account. Ed, I follow everything you do, and you do a great job here. So
Thank you. I wish you a good day. Thank you very
so
much.
Thanks, Mrs. Thanks, Treaty. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
You.
the opportunity to talk
So if
now.
you guys want to know anything about PP, I know it's not a good name to use or whatever. I can tell you everything. You want to hear a story about him when he knocked on somebody's door, a friend of mine in Ontario?
So I'm going to just mute your mic, because in this show we give everybody sort of equal opportunity to talk, and I'm trying hard to get my wordage edgewise here. So PG has come up here, and I think he has a question for you, actually.
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
So PG, if you'd like to go ahead and make your comments.
I do have a question for you. They don't that's why I jumped up, is because it sounds like you're recording a lot of stuff about PP, and I've been looking for that clip where Patrick Brown accused him of having foreign campaign funds while he was while they were debating for the candidacy for the leadership race. Do you have that?
Yeah, I do. It's
You
on my
have
profile.
that clip?
You're gonna have to search through my profile. I don't know how you do it, whether it's tagged or not, but I do have a video of that on there.
Okay, I'll look for it. I followed you, and I'll look for it.
Yeah,
Because I've been looking for that, and for whatever reason, I can't find it anywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's out there. I've seen that clip a few times.
Yeah.
Maybe you.
You've seen that clip otherwise? Like, I've seen it in real time, and I never thought about hanging on to it. I thought it would be big news, and then next thing I know, it's gone, and I couldn't find it. I haven't been able to find it.
Is that the one where he was doing the interview with CBC or CTV?
No, it was the one where they were actually in the debate, and he accused him on stage of I think he said Chinese campaign funds, though. That's the reason why PP has blocked me from everywhere, because I kept asking him for it.
Do you have access to YouTube? Do you use YouTube much?
No, I don't use it much. I don't like it.
Okay, if you want, you can just type in Conservative Party leadership debate and then the year in YouTube or even in Google, and that leadership.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. Can you guys take this one maybe into chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
we can
sorry.
do that. I'll look through your stuff.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry,
thanks for having me up. I don't want to hijack the whole life.
Okay,
that's all.
Do you have anything you want to add on what we're talking about?
To add to the conversation today that we're having about the Conservative platform, and just basically how this whole thing is going down with Conservatives, and their party seems to be shrinking.
Did you hear that
it is shrinking? And I remember the days of them having 2 seats. I remember joking about they're going to need a 2-story house, and they had a Corvette as their bus. So we'll see what's going on. But I came up when you were talking about how white men are being left behind in the patriarchy stuff, right? Don't let us off the hook. We just need to know better. We just need to know better, right? Like, it's too easy for us already. We need to learn it, and we need to know better.
We appreciate that. Being open to the message is really a big piece of the struggle and getting it known out there. As a woman who's studied feminism and has walked that path, and understanding that, you know, feminism is a political ideology that looks at oppression of people through a gendered lens. That's all it is. So, you know, looking through the lens of womanhood, of manhood, of any other intersectionality that takes place there. And when you start exploring how the patriarchy has developed these gender roles for people, that can do quite a bit of harm. And it's not the fault of the person who's grown up in that system, whether you're whatever gender you are, but understanding that some of those gender roles have held you back, have held you,
Yeah.
right?
Susan in the comments says something interesting. Men need to learn that the patriarchy hurts us too.
Hmm.
And that's so true when you think about, because I have a son who loves some of the more feminine things. And if he had been more like in less of a house where I was a strong force, he might not have felt comfortable doing that. You know, if his dad, for example, was very, and his dad was very big on gender norms. That's something that I had a hard time with. He didn't mind LGBTQ, but he had a problem with just the definition that if you're a man, you're a man. And luckily, my kid didn't have to pick up on that and can express himself. But maybe that wouldn't be the case, right? So it does hurt men too.
And you must remember, Jehoja made a comment there. It's not like men as individuals. We're talking about a system here.
Mm-hmm.
A system of a code of conduct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's about
What's
just
that?
that code of conduct and finding out, has it helped you? Has it harmed you? Has it helped you but harmed others so you could be in that privileged spot? And
Like,
then
I'm going to use nail polish as a silly example. Because it's a big thing. You see men, when men wear nail polish online, they get harassed over and over again about it, over nail polish.
Yep.
happy that happens to them, I believe.
Like,
Yeah.
My nails aren't nice enough to wear polish anyway. But
no, but it's just kind of an
But-
example of that, how that it leaks into
Yeah.
everyday life in so many ways.
So do you guys? So you're talking about the PP's gender policy? Is that what you mean? Sorry, about what he said he's going to do or whatever.
So this is how the political becomes personal, right? Is
Yes.
like putting that down in policy, right? Only saying that there's two genders.
Yeah,
That is the Trump page book. That's right out of what's happening in
Well,
the United
PP said, or maybe Jenny said it or whatever, his campaign thing, but they said they'll enact gender policies that are similar to Trump's. So how similar, you know?
Similar isn't the same.
I don't
They're pretty
need
similar.
anything similar. I don't want anything like that.
Yeah,
Tiny
they're
Trump
pretty-
has been
they're-
interviewed, and he has said he only recognizes two genders.
Yeah, I know.
Heard the words come out of his
I know. I
mouth.
saw it. Yeah, I saw it. It's disgusting.
Submit this. I have Seraphim requesting to come up and talk. She is a friendly.
Can okay.
Do you want-
I just want to say, and I'm gonna drop. I just want to say something real quick because I don't know if Addicted Bear Row. I have to explain that because you said oh we have to explain it to you too or something like that. I don't think you do, but that may have been a misunderstanding. I get that the patriarchy can hurt men too, but I personally wouldn't want to put that, like I wouldn't want to have that as a discussion that I'm having, because I don't want to hijack the fact that it hurts women way more than it does. I don't know if I'm saying this right. I don't want to inject myself into your issue in that way to say what about me, if that makes any sense to
Yeah,
anybody.
But women's issues affect men's issues too, because
I
if
know.
a woman's not happy or a man's not happy, it affects everybody, right?
Or any
Yeah,
gender.
but I don't want to hijack it, right? Like I don't want to hijack it. So
Okay.
that's where I
And
stand.
let's use this opportunity. I just want to remind people that you're watching the Finding Your Own Damn Way show on the Beaver Politics movement here on TikTok, and that we do accept goals for the emotional work that the hosts put in, as well as for some of the tech stuff. And we ask that you subscribe, which gives you access to our Discord, where all of these conversations explode into more individual things. You can meet in small rooms, do videos. You can there's video calls and stuff, but and that we're on YouTube. So if you ever miss an episode, you can catch up on this tomorrow or the next day whenever it gets uploaded. So there's a little Beaver Politics plug for the show, and Sarah Fima, is that how you call it?
Serafima.
Fima, would you like to join the conversation?
Yes. The topic that I was going to bring up was actually something that was getting discussed in the comments section, and I don't want to derail if the gender question is the mode of this conversation.
It's where it's taken us.
Yes. Well, because somebody in the comment section had been talking about, specifically, I know what they were referencing. They were referencing the interview, if you can even call that, between Jordan Peterson and Pierre Poilievre. I don't know how many people watched it. It was atrocious.
Is that the one that had the sponsorship by the Planned Parenthood?
Yes, it had that sponsorship in it. It was quite gross.
And the vitamin pills too.
But here's the crux of what I wanted to say, because it's a mode of disinformation that I have seen across social media for weeks, and I am consistently in every kind of comment section trying to combat it as best as I can. I have a degree in history. Politics is something that I'm very passionate about, so it's something that I feel is, part of my duty as a Canadian to inform people of, reality versus this fantasy. Pierre Poilievre does not have the jurisdiction to do half of the things that he was claiming he can do.
Yes.
When he was talking specifically about cutting back on bureaucracy, he named 4 separate entities that he would have to have control over. He does not have control over any of them. The one thing that he had control over was in regards to housing prices specifically, was the federal aspect of it. We are not like America. Our Canadian government is built entirely differently. While we are both having, a democratic system, the way in which our system is broken up and who has control over those systems are entirely different. So when he is claiming that he can make changes to provincial legislation, he cannot. When he is claiming he can make jurisdiction over municipal, and that's when you get into things like land tax, that's all municipal. He has absolutely no jurisdiction over that. He cannot make changes, legally cannot make changes to any of those things. And it's so pervasive the way that he makes these claims over things that he will never have any control of, even if he got the seat as Prime Minister.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I find it very frustrating that he keeps pushing housing. It's provincial. Healthcare, it's provincial. Even immigration, he blames the federal government for immigration when it was conservative premiers that wanted more workers and wanted more students. So, and that's what I don't like about PP is he thinks everybody's stupid, but probably maybe 50 or whatever, 60% of people don't know their jurisdictions. So he's just playing on that. Would you guys agree?
I'd agree.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the con, right?
Yeah, it's extremely misleading. But so is the 15, or was it 12% or 15% off? He says when it turns out to be 2.5.
Yeah, it's 2.25. He did it again today in the presser. He said, "Yep, we're going to cut income tax by 15%." I'm just thinking, how can this guy do this? And the other day, he was pushing for 3 days in a row. He was pushing the plagiarism about Carney. That's been called out.
Yeah.
He pushed for 2 days in a row. I call this stuff on my channel. I have little videos of all this stuff calling them out. He pushed that Carney assets in Brookfield, eh?
Let's just say that if he, look at that, I'm centered. Let's just say that if he was to cut 15%, like an actual 15%, that would be a pretty popular policy. like the first bracket, I think, is at 15%. So if he was to actually cut that, that would actually be pretty popular. Like the NDP would be standing up and clapping. You know what I mean?
That's what he's relying on. He's relying on the fact that while he can sit there and say 15%, people are going to assume that he means the bottom 15%. But no, he means 15% of a percentage, which ends up being 2.7, I think.
And
Yeah,
why is that?
2.25, I think it is. Yeah,
2.25.
yeah. So, no, I get it. I get it. And I know immediately I knew, like, even if I would have thought that for a second, I would have thought, no, that doesn't even make sense. You know, like, swastika. But anyway, it doesn't even make sense. And I'm sure a lot of people think that they're going to go down to zero taxes, right? Like, how many of these people have been talking about, we don't even need to pay taxes. We shouldn't have to.
What did you just yell there, PG? Swastika?
Yeah, I've committed to saying swastika every time I see one. So,
Okay.
Fair.
We appreciate you.
unfortunately, every time I'm talking and I see one, I have to say swastika. So,
Like Punch Buddy when we were kids. Punch Buggy with a Volkswagen.
yeah. So somebody gets punched,
And
right?
PG down here. Ed and PG, if you could just give us a pause here for a sec. I want to talk about what how do you say her name again? Sarah Prima? I'm sorry. You got a new follow from me anyway. I want to talk about how when we think about the low grade Maple Mega movement here in Canada and how that is fed by Tiny Trump here in Canada. Now, the dismantling of our democratic system, our parliamentary norms that is happening, for instance, in his support of someone like Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith, who's introduced legislation that removes the power of the municipalities. Danielle Smith as so it's municipal, provincial, and federal, the three levels of government here in Canada. And in Alberta, they've moved forward with legislation to take away the power of the municipalities to say, have their elected council members sit as council members, that they can actually go in and remove people. And they have actually done so. And that is such a non-covered story by our, like CBC and CTV. This is a dismantling of democracy. As Tiny Trump uses non-confidence motions, like, to abuse that system, to ridicule our system is what is entrenching the ability for these lies to take hold. And there's no fact checking anymore through CBC or CTV. The Rachel Gilmore story that broke this week about how she's got a recording of it about the producer saying
They don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah, whatever that means. They want to dedicate the people to fight back the hate. Just like this comment section here today in this live, let the hate sit there and just ignore it, and then it'll go away eventually. But it should be, the presenters, the leaders, should be fact checked.
So are you saying, sorry, that Danielle Smith can fire elected officials?
Sorry about that.
Right, she's done it in Edmonton on I believe it's the Edmonton.
Municipality or town council or something, or what?
Yeah, she's done.
Yeah, she
I
can
like to know.
supersede their jurisdiction. So she can move in, and while they can vote one way based on the needs of their constituents,
Okay.
Danielle Smith can now go in and say, no, you're not doing it.
That's
Oh
right.
my God!
So,
Really?
and done so. So that's a shift in our democratic principles, right? But a lot of people don't understand that Canada is technically a monarchy. And we have a parliamentary system. We are not the United States Republic in a two-party system.
No.
No.
Swaths of differences. And if you follow Scott Douglas at all here on TikTok, you'll get a lot of civics lessons, so to speak, because people just really don't understand.
So if the NDP do real poor and don't become an official party, are we a two-party system in Canada then?
We're now we have Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, the Bloc.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying if the
Bloc will still exist.
Yes, I understand. But okay. So if the NDP doesn't get enough seats this election, win enough, does that mean we live under a two-party system?
No, the Bloc.
No, because the Bloc still exists.
Okay, so they'll be an official party most likely.
And I believe the NDP have to rebuild their party up.
Yeah.
I've often said Jake Mead's been in since 2017.
Yeah.
About there, somewhere in there, which is 8 years. And if you haven't really taken it by now, I don't know,
Yes.
maybe it's time to pass the baton. I sure wish Charlie Angus would
Well, I
be
think in the last year, Jagmeet's become very similar to Pierre. He lies a lot about what Carney says when Carney hasn't said it. You know, I'm just sitting there like going, "Why are you saying that, Jagmeet?" You know,
He's
he's
I'm incredibly disappointed in him because I
yeah.
love him.
Have you ever
So
heard him
many
say
people
that? He accuses
like
Carney
that.
of saying. Have you
No,
heard
I've
him?
heard it. That's why I'm disappointed. I wouldn't be disappointed just on someone else telling me. I've heard it.
Yeah, like you're just like he never said that, and you know, PP does that all the time, but he's doing that now more often, eh?
Yeah, well, I've seen it plenty of times with PP. The whole rally campaign for the last few years, right out of the gate at the leadership role, him not taking the security clearance. That's an abuse of our parliamentary norms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Canadians with this, like Canadians just typically like to tune into politics around election cycles because of what's happening in the States.
yeah.
Somebody's
How
mic.
do
There's a lot of background noise. PG,
yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
it's you.
How do you guys how do you guys feel about him carting his kids and his wife around? He had his kid on the stage the other day and he was bad mouthing the Liberals, saying that his son was smarter than the Liberals while he's holding his kid in the middle of the rally in front of a
What do you mean
crowd.
martyr? Has anyone said anything about his child?
I have not seen that, and that disgusts me.
What about Carney's? Yeah, that's nobody's business. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. That lady from Juno News, whose wife, husband is.
I think he's saying not even to bring it up.
Yeah, like who cares? I don't care. It doesn't matter. But they are bringing it up. The Juno News, I think it's on one run by Candace Malcolm, who is the wife of the husband of Shopify. She's circulating that all around. Who cares? It's not my business.
Well, we don't have a first lady, so to speak, position like they do in the United States for wives, and but I don't disagree that your family support. We need to know who you are, where you've come from. Are you a family-oriented person, or maybe the single politician that's out there? What bothers me is that if a woman was to bring her children to the stage, it would be looked at differently than when the trophy child is held. And I think that still exists, and I would like to, I would like to shift some of the gendered pieces around that.
And we just came full circle with the patriarchy, right? Because Pierre can hand off the baby to the mom and still keep going, and the mom wouldn't be able to do that, right? Like
that's the image he's selling.
So that's exactly.
It's not by accident.
In all of that, let's not forget that Stephen Harper is still in the mix, right? So he's done a lot of work when he was prime minister to be able to do some of the shady stuff that he's doing now. These people are not only acting on what it looks like Trump is doing, they're acting on what the ex-politicians of our country know what they can and cannot do, right? So whether or not 50%, 75%, or 100% of the people don't know, they know. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they're doing.
But isn't Harper now in charge of the pension fund in Alberta or something now? Didn't Daniel Smith hire him to be on a board, Beaver?
Something like that. But he's also, even more importantly, he's in charge of the IDU, right? So that's a more nefarious organization that we have to be concerned about.
Mo out of Saskatchewan has just put him in charge of their finances as well. Stephen Harper's son, who actually, when this happened, when Daniel Smith first came into power, Stephen Harper's son was getting a master's in, I don't know, it's some kind of business and economics or whatever.
Yeah, Kenny hired him.
Hang on. He was in New York City he was in school, not even graduated, and he was awarded a position with the Alberta government, making like almost $250,000 a year, and not even graduated, right? That's just who you know. And now Stephen Harper is running the finances. Basically, it's an umbrella situation. They've given him a head title for him to go in and look at things like the pension situation in Alberta. But that is a small, what PG says, he is the chair of the International Democratic Union. That's an international far right-wing movement that has people like Orban from Turkey sitting at that table, Trump, all of the Israel, Netanyahu, these people have come together and they gather money together and they go and they fund small right-wing movements. And in Canada here, look at what happened in British Columbia with the rise of the BC Conservatives on the provincial level. Good example of following the money back into where these people are. Anyway,
On the plus side, I'm about to drop. I'll stop hijacking you guys. I'll cross the car again. So on the plus side, Marie Le Pen in France was caught embezzling funds and has been arrested. And I don't know if she's going to do jail time, but she is barred from holding any kind of office or running again.
Yeah.
So that's on the plus side.
And they're
She is
already
also a member
trying
of
to
the IDU.
I just want to make note of the time. The show is going to be over in 9 minutes here. So I want to give Sarah, you another opportunity to have conversation as well as whoever is left on the panel. Thank you, PG, for joining up. Appreciate your conversation and your support. And you too, Ed, I will be back. Outside of the show, I feel the way your voice is coming across today, you need to be highlighted, especially in an uninterrupted format, so you can get out everything you need to say. And Sarah, is there anything else you'd like to add, or just?
Well, particularly someone Sasquatch in the comments there. I don't remember specifically the name, but there is someone on YouTube who has done a deep dive into all of the corporate affiliates for Stephen Harper, and it is a dark and twisty path for sure. Otherwise, no, there wasn't much. I appreciate you guys so much for letting me up and letting me have a chance to speak, giving me a bit of space, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes, and come back anytime. We appreciate you. Got a new follow from me today, so I look
thank
forward to seeing some of your content and vice versa on here in Beaver Politics. Okay, how about you, Treaty Birder? Treaty 6? Treaty Birder. Treaty 6? Still around. Well, I got to say, the last hour of this conversation has really gone into a lot of different directions than the Conservative Party platform. But the bottom line is, because the political is so personal, all these other pieces are important. And where else can you express your fears? Because the existential threat is not well received if you're surrounded by conservatives in your life. It's a place to come here and to vent those fears and to kind of, work with other people who are like-minded, who are experiencing that fear and won't shut you down in that conversation. So that's one thing I want to welcome here on this show. Treaty 6, are you back? Or how about you, Jana? Do you want to have a last word?
Sure, that was just a really interesting conversation and some really interesting guests. Seraphima, I hope I get her name right, is really knowledgeable. Like, wow. Yeah, so is everybody. So is Ed and why am I forgetting the last name?
Dave from today. I mean, to have somebody that's actually researched and studied cults, that understands that there's religious cults and political cults, right? And that we're watching them grow in front of our eyes. And I think that we need to be aware, right? I hope that's,
absolutely.
That applies to our politics here in Canada. All right, Treaty 6. Ooh, I love your face. You have such a beautiful face. You're on mute. You're on mute still. Here, let me see. I can help with that too. Oh, she dropped out. Well, I'm sure she'll be back here just to give us a last message here. You're muted, Treaty 6. Yeah, I think she had to drop out. She'll hopefully, here we go. Bring her back up. Accept. There we go.
Sorry, I think I don't know, overtired.
It's all good. I appreciate you putting us in at your meetings.
Well, and I'm sorry, I had to kind of step away for a minute again for another call, I wanted to join the conversation because I've been looking through And I encourage anyone that's listening to look through that policy declaration of the Conservative Party of Canada and pay close attention to the words they use. Like for me, when I look through the Indigenous commitments, there's a lot of still like what they're doing for or to Indigenous people. They call it Indigenous affairs. They want to get rid of the Indian Act. Like there's some words that when you just read the document, it seems okay, but when you really dive into the words and the way the sentence is put together, it's a little scary, and you can see where the path that they're taking. So, if just for everybody, and not just the Conservative Party, but look at everybody's platform and their policies, and find where you feel you're reflected within that, and pay very close attention to the language they use in those documents. Because I've worked for government, both provincial and federal, and I know that wordsmithing is something that they do, and they do it purposefully. I was a policy writer myself, and every word matters. So pay close attention to what you're reading. And I'm sorry I wasn't here to participate in the whole conversation, and because I would have liked to talk a little bit more about the policy that they're tabling with regards to Indigenous. Like a couple pages, and we're number 112 on their list, just before criminal justice. I wonder why you have those two kind of together. You know what I mean? Like the flow is weird too.
When you start paying attention to the writing and the language, they have 186 pages, right? But say it's like the abortion issue. They are finding language and they are hiding that conversation under the criminal justice laws. They want to change for personhood for fetus, to give personhood to a fetus. But they're doing that under their criminal section. They're not doing it under their healthcare section in their policy manual. Right? Yeah. So you have to be able to discern. And I will say that, section 19 and 29, removing taxes on mothers, but not on birth control, regulating women's bodies, not to do with the healthcare, and then on part 78, I just wrote a couple of notes down. So on like 78, the conscious, changing language so that doctors who have this pro-life conscience are able to circumvent the charter right for women's health care. Okay? So reading that document, you have to do with discerning eyes because of the level of deep manipulation and layers. So I thank you for that comment. It's important.
It really is. And a lot of people don't think of it that way, right? And we see words and it sounds great. And there's some folks that aren't, maybe, that haven't been exposed to policy. Like I'm sure you have too, as a social worker. I've been in roles in almost all my life where I have to deal with policy in some way. So I've learned how to tear policy apart and use it to work for me too. But, they can use it to work against us. So yeah, that's my warning. And one thing that stood out to me, I want to just share real quick, was section 116 of their policy platform. They're talking about Canada must develop a manner that ensures constitutional equality and workability. And really what that says to me is that they don't believe that Indigenous people deserve a special place in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they're getting it whether they like it or not.
It's there. Yeah. So thank you for having me up, and I appreciate sharing space with you.
What you were saying, not a lot of people, born with information about policy and legislation, right? Nobody need apologize for what they don't come to the table with. But I can tell you this much: policy is interpretable, and policy is what is manipulated, molded, and changed. Legislation is what is permanent.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So if you ever come across a system and there's a piece of policy that you're feeling is overlording you in some way, push back against it. It's the policy that can change, but not the legislation.
That's right. And so many government officials will be like, well, this is the policy. Well, I don't care if this is the policy. It doesn't fit in every circumstance. And sometimes you have to think outside the policy. The policy is a guide to help you usually administer legislation or regulation. So, yeah, we as citizens of this country have a right to push back on policy.
Absolutely. call protest. So Jana, I'll give you the last comment of the day to wrap the show up.
I just wanted to ask Trudy Sixbird, hopefully what is a very quick question. What part of the policy, I remember when he was talking and the wording he used was so weird to me, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it basically was giving you the idea that you would get money, or the Indigenous would get money from the land, but the way he worded it was very clear that you weren't going to get the choice in deciding when he was going to take or what he was going to take. Does that make sense?
I try not to listen to him too much.
I don't blame him.
I did hear him, like, he wants to share revenue, tax revenue,
Yes.
from resource development. And what I heard, what stuck out to me was, and then you can buy your own clean water.
Oh, I know.
And
Responsible for the clean
we don't want tax money. That means that's something that would come away from other Canadians too. What we want is a share of the revenue. We want to share the royalty. Those are resources that were agreed to be shared with Canada. So yeah, he can pound sand.
If I find it, I'll send it to you, because his wording was very specific in that it gave the insinuation that you wouldn't have a choice on him taking the land. He was going to do that anyway.
Oh yeah,
You'll get tax revenue from it.
I'd like to see it then, and maybe I can
He didn't
do
say
it
it
or
like that,
stitch
so
it or
not-
something.
Just for anyone listening, I'm not saying those were exact words. That's the point, is that I don't remember the exact words, so I'm looking for that clip. If anybody has it, send it to me, but I'm going to look.
Thank you.
Okay. That was it then.
On that happy note, I appreciate both you women for being part of the show and for hanging out and making, finding your own damn way, a good show today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you to Kay today for joining us for the first hour. And it was nice to meet Ed and PG. I think that's one of the first times I live. And so I appreciate everybody's support today. If I've missed anybody, we're gonna sign off now. And the next Beaver Politics show is this evening at 5:00 with Mrs. Radical and Frontline, and then late night show with Pixie, which is going to be a little more spicier, is what I hear, a lot more humor and stuff. And then of course we have Jana's show on our Friday night. We have the debate night, and then Jana's show on Saturday. I could go through a whole list. The Beaver Politics first pin video will give you an introduction to all the shows. We're here 7 nights a week and 5 days a week now. So thank you again for joining, and we'll see you all in cyberspace soon. Bye-bye.
Afternoon.